created everything. Look what a powerful being you are. You did these things, but now you're in a human body, you forget the power you have.
What you do is what the whole universe is doing at the place you call here and now. You are something the whole universe is doing in the same way that a wave is something that the whole ocean is doing.
You're doing it.
Doing what?
Using your imagination.
Welcome to Metamystics, where you don't know what you don't know. My name's Jonathan, and today we have an amazing author. First time to the show, Harrison Viers Newberry. Welcome to the show, sir.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to be here with you.
Yes, really looking forward to this kind of conversation. And if you are a fan of ETs, of interdimensional, anything, different kinds of races, and all of the things that most people may find woo-woo or too weird, this is exactly the conversation we're going to be getting into. Really excited about this conversation. I think that it's actually going to take off in a much deeper way. I would love to be able to hear a little bit about your experience and what led you, sir, to these experiences that made you want to write this book.
Well, I've actually have 4 books, but many years ago when I was a young man, I went through some real tragedy in my life. I lost both my parents, my only brother, and my wife back to back to back. And it almost wiped me out. I climbed into the booze, and that almost wiped me out. But after about 2 years of that, I finally got into some therapy and counseling and left all that behind. One thing led to another, and I was drawn to go to Peru like a magnet. And I ended up meeting some people down there. I went alone. I'd never been there before, and I went by myself. And what occurred was just incredible. I ended up meeting with a group of Quechua Indians known as the Quero, who had been in hiding for some 500 years. No one knew they were there. It was prophesized, but it was a myth. And I became a student of their lineage of shamanism, trained by Dr. Alberto Biotto, who is a PhD in psychology and medical anthropology, and walked that path for a good many years. And then I'd always had an interest in UFOs. I mean, I just believe there's got to be something out there. And it started like it does with everyone. I started looking up. You don't have to look very hard now. We have the internet to get a wealth of information. People say, why don't they talk about this? Why is no one talking? Oh, they are. It's all over the internet. It's all over the place. You're just not going to find it on ABC, CNN, NBC, and all that yet. But it's even happening there now. It's coming out.
Yes, it is. That's the beautiful thing about all of this, is that what used to be somewhat of a fringe topic, that you were considered maybe a little crazy if you believed in the little green men from Mars or whatever, now has become you're crazy if you don't believe in aliens, which I think is next level, really. I think that whenever you can kind of open your mind to other life, not only on other planets, I think it's probably way more profound that it's happening interdimensionally, personally, and things that are happening outside of time in general. We look at reality as if it is one straight linear line of time. If you're existing in a higher dimension, that is not a barrier that you have to overcome. You can look at the final page of the book. You don't have to wait for each page and each day to go through. You can just look at, all right, well, hey, I want to see how it ends. Now, like most of us, we would prefer not to start at the last page of the book, and so maybe that's what keeps it fun, it keeps it entertaining or whatever. But yeah, it's I think that what we're dealing with could absolutely shatter the minds of most people in reality. I mean, you want to talk about absolute craziness. It would be opening the hamster door and allowing the hamster to escape into an entirely new dream of a world, right?
Well, I refer to dimensions for this conversation as densities. And I got this from our cosmic visitors, because they kept saying density and we keep saying dimension. And the question came about, why do you prefer to call it densities? And they explained that dimensions are geometric, mathematical patterns. Like a straight line is the first dimension. A square on a flat surface is second dimension. A cube is the third dimension. A Passerach is a fourth dimension, and so forth up to like 8 or 9. But what we're talking about is energy, consciousness, levels of consciousness. But they don't separate them like we do, and like we've been in 3D. The third density, which is a very dense, energetic field to be in. They're all in the fifth. Everything outside of our Van Allen belts is 5D.
Whoa, I've never heard it put that way.
Now, everything is outside of our Van Allen belts is 5D. The Van Allen belts were manufactured. We're the only planet with them. Okay, do you ever wonder why? Earth is the only planet with these Van Allen belts. They generate them from what we call our moon. And it's a force field to hold the reptilian negative forces in. But it started 12,500 years ago.
So, oh my God, I have never heard this before. This actually kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, because
to me, when I first heard it, I'm like, what? I had the same response, but there was several hours of this, so it took me a few days, and I had to go back and revisit, and every time I got something differently. And it's been going on for 2 or 3 years, about 3 years, I guess. What happened? The reptilians came here 40 to 50,000 years ago to Earth. The problem is of negative infiltration on a planet. These negative beings come into a peaceful planet like Earth was, and was a 5D planet, by the way, and still is. I'll come back to this. All right, they come in, and using their powerful psionic abilities, mind control, they began to install false ideas, lying to us, things like aging quick. You ever read in the Bible? There's tons of cases in ancient literature of people living hundreds of years. What happened?
Methuselah.
Modern medicine now, and we're living 85 years on average or something like that.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Before you go any farther, I do want to ask you this question about the reptilians, because this is something that I have often speculated about. As far as the reptilians go, do you believe that all reptilians recognize that they are reptilians as humans, or is it some kind of underlying energy that maybe they're not fully aware of yet? Because they say that whenever you come into a human carnation, you forget everything, and that's part of the struggle, or however it goes, right? And that's why we can't really.
Some cases of that. I was watching a documentary a few years ago, and I don't know why it stuck with me, but it was about the fundamentalist group of the Church of Latter-day Saints. They were into bigamy and all that, and down in southern Utah. And the guy who was the leader, he was controlling these people it was like a Nazi camp almost. But they'd been raised with this stuff from childhood, and he wanted to take this woman as his wife, but she loved his brother. And when she told him that, he didn't want to embarrass himself. And she said she could tell he was upset, but his eyes looked like slit eyes, snake eyes. That's a telltale sign. This guy was definitely reptilian. But not all there's reptilian species all over the galaxy, and they're not all negative.
That's what I hear. I hear that not all the reptilians are negative, but I guess the reason why I brought that up is that whenever I think about, the planet that we live on and the certain density or dimension that we're living in, I can't imagine that like the worst type of people wouldn't be of that breed, right? Like of that nature, because there are some people that can't imagine or can't fathom doing something or even thinking the way that a pedophile might think, or that a serial killer might think, or you know what I mean? Like some of the worst of the worst of the worst scum, most people, including myself, I can't understand how that person got there mentally.
It's incomprehensible. And, this is an area what you're asking. I haven't really delved into it, and I don't feel like I can give you an educated answer on this. But what I do know is that they're chasing them down now because our cosmic visitors are here in force and have been since 2008 in particular. But there's good ones and there's bad ones. And even the ones that are here, they're saying that part of them now wish to cooperate because they've been trapped on Earth for 12,500 years. And they want to be free too. But the rest of them, they'll fight to the bitter end.
Is this where the idea of the Nephilim come in?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes. And there's a lot of references in the Bible, a lot of references. Even the Vatican talks about, openly stated that the Bible is full of extraterrestrials. The Vatican said that, and those that have researched that, have gone back and done root word searches and so forth and traced all that back. And they're definitely talking about ETs. But the reptilians were here. But what happened? The Sumerian tablets say they've been here 250 years, but the Tibetans say that's false. It's been like 40, 50,000. Well, eventually what they did, there was another planet in our solar system called Tiamat. It was a large planet. It was a water planet. And they went there and set up a dummy base and started sending out dummy electromagnetic signals, knowing that the Federation was going to come to investigate. And they did. And when they did, it was a trap. And they were ambushed, attacked, and this horrific and bloody war ensued. And in the end, the Federation was so desperate to stop this war that they used zero-point energy devices and exploded Tiamat, blew it out of the air. And they nuked Mars, which lost Mars' atmosphere. Well, after this, they were just tired and weak and beaten down. The reptilians had lost all their technology, but they were still here. The Federation knew they were on Earth. So the solar system was a mess because you had debris everywhere and they couldn't navigate it. It was dangerous. So what they did was they came to what they refer to as the lunar space station that we call our moon. And we've been learning things about the moon being hollow and all that since the Apollo days.
Yeah, they say it's a satellite and it's hollow, and allegedly whenever the space shuttle landed, the moon rung like a bell and stuff like that. And I'll tell you what, this scam that our government is doing with NASA sending up, astronauts to the moon here recently, it is the biggest scam and one of the biggest jokes of all time, because literally the guy that was running the whole operation said, "Oh yeah, we got him right out of central casting." And then you start looking at who the actual astronauts were. They were literally in movies. Like one of them was in one of the Dune movies. Another one was in what was the other one? Like Walking Dead or something crazy. It's like these people are actors. They tell you, they're like, "Oh yeah, well, they've actually been training to be an astronaut for the last 13 or 14 years, but here they were in this Dune movie." It's like I feel like the reptilians must be running a space organization here. I mean, I don't mean to place all the blame on the reptilians. I'm sure there's plenty of other shitty breeds out there, but and humans included. I mean, I'm not even trying to say that we're all good either, because we've all seen, how a lot of humans interact. But
well, consider that they needed help, and they used your psionic powers, and it was like making a deal with the devil. You do this for us, you'll become the wealthiest guy in town.
Yep. Meeting the devil at the crossroads.
Yeah. But at any rate, what they did was they enclosed Earth in a hologram. It's all a program. Now, quantum physicists back in 1987 did an experiment under the auspices of the U.S. Air Force and proved that we exist in a quantum field. Some just call it the field. Some call it the quantum field. Some call it the matrix. Some call it God or source. But it's a container. It's three things. It's a container for all things, material things in the universe, including us. Includes everything. Nothing exists outside of the container. Now, secondly, it's a bridge between our inner world and our outer world. You pray, prayer works. But this is how. Thirdly, and this is my favorite that leads up to modern day, is that it is a mirror between what you truly believe in your heart and soul and what you manifest as the reality around you.
100% agree with everything that you just said.
We were convinced, above all bad things they did, that we are limited. Some talk about the fall of consciousness. There was a time when we were of the spirit world. And when we incarnated, it was a shock. Because in the spirit world, if you want something or desire something, you can think it and it manifests right before your eyes. But it still does do that to some degree here in the 3D. It's a lot faster in the 5D.
Yeah, there's a bit of a lag.
Yeah. But the program was designed as a caricature of 5D. And yes, a lot of what we see on Earth is light. It's not real. It's a hologram. But the big thing, and what they actually call it, is it's a frequency suppression machine. It suppresses the fourth and fifth density. Earth is still a 5D planet. Always has been.
Well,
that's normal for the universe.
Let me tell you a little something on top of that as well. I've done a lot of research into what happens with psychedelics, like as far as it pertaining to the mind, and we have this thing inside of our mind called the default mode network. That default mode network, it is essentially our filter to allow us to perceive physical reality, right? It filters out all of the illusion and helps clarify it a little bit, right? And it's almost like looking through a scope. Instead of looking at the broadness of everything, outside of the lens of the scope, we're looking through the scope of a gun or something like that, right? And that's kind of like how we perceive this reality. However, what they did was, I believe it's called the Imperial College London, where they did the intravenous drip of DMT that lasts, because typically DMT lasts anywhere from 5 minutes to 15 minutes. And so it's really hard to document what was going on there. But they hooked these people up to an intravenous DMT drip that allowed them to experience, the veil being lifted for an hour plus. And what they found was, what was going on inside the minds is that the default mode network is switched off, which means you have the ability to perceive all of everything. There is no more filter. And so that's why I found it really funny, because people say that, doing psychedelics or going into a trance state or going into a meditation or whatever is somewhat of a hallucination. But in fact, the reality that we live in is an illusion. It is the hallucination. We are getting the filtered stuff, and we call the psychedelics hallucinations, which it's just backwards.
I told you that I walked the shamanic path.
Yes.
I also spent a fair amount of time in the Amazon and participated in ayahuasca ceremonies.
Really? How was that? I'm scared to death of it.
Well, they call it the rope of death. It scared the heck out of me too. And when I first heard about it, I thought, God, you got to be out of your mind, But over a period of about 5-6 years, I changed my mind. It's very difficult to explain, because what happens in the spirit world, Jonathan, doesn't translate into English or any other human language.
Yeah, and the closest you can get is through esoteric philosophy.
Now, you just can't. It's hard to talk about. But one of the things that I walked away at the end of it, I had a friend with me, a woman who's a double PhD at a university here in Georgia. And I talked to her not long ago, and she said, "Do you remember when you came out?" And I was out for like 8 hours, which is a long time, because I'd gotten a double dose. I thought it wasn't working, and I took another one, and I had a ride and a half, boy.
Oh.
But the next morning I said, I can't believe it's so darn simple. I kept saying, it's so simple. And she said, what? What is so simple? Life is so simple. But the key that I discovered for us as individuals is the practice of rigorous self-honesty. You get angry at someone. First thing I do is ask myself, what am I afraid of? And you have to be willing to really look deep within to answer those questions.
Got to have the inner alchemy to transmutate.
Yeah. And that alone carried me to where I got to. I mean, it made all the difference in the world. But what happened was the Tibetans and these other races that were involved in this war were planning to come back soon and clean up the mess and run down the remaining reptilians. I don't know what happened. They say due to a lot of unforeseen and complicated reasons. It's been 12,500 years. And when they came back, they took their eyes off of it, and they admit it. It's their fault. They wrongfully left it unattended. And the reptilians had been busy as beavers, boy. And they had installed religions, especially Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And the big thing that they've done More recently, it's with technology, with the advent of mass media. We've been led to believe that working and fighting is noble because we can't see any other way to do it. And we feel like heroes, but we come home at night, what do? We watch TV and get further programming.
Yep.
They say that we're not adults here. We're irresponsible because we have to be told right from wrong, what to believe, who to listen to, how to act, how to behave. It starts with their parents. It's not their fault. They're just teaching us. I know my parents would have never lied to me. I don't even think my teachers would where I grew up. And then your college professors, your bosses, politicians, Hollywood. We allow others to tell us who we are. It's all in our head. But that's not who we are. Our soul, our spirit isn't even in our body. We're animated. We're in like you were saying earlier, it's all like a virtual reality.
We're a projection of our true selves.
Yes. The brain is a receiver. And it's like a hard drive on a computer. It's programmable. We've all been programmed. I've seen so much of it. Once I started looking at that, I'm like, God, boy, have I been programmed and led down the primrose path. But the Caro, back in the late 90s, well, they told me, they said the new shaman would come from the West, from the United States. Another guy, they put it to him a little differently, a guy named Jay Widener, who's also a well-known author and speaker, lecturer. And he said they told him that the Pachacuti, which we talk about in this lineage, Pachacuti was the last leader of the Inca Empire when the Spanish conquistadors came. And it means to turn the world upside down, but it really means to tear the veil between this world and the next. And they said it would begin in the United States, that we would become a people of the heart.
That makes a lot of sense. I've been reading a lot of literature from the late 1800s, early 1900s, and so on. Recently, I've just gotten into reading a book by Helena Blavatsky, who essentially was one of the founding members of the Theosophical Society. And man, some of the teachings in there are amazing. This book called Land of the Gods. And it's meant to be told like in story form, because that's kind of the way our minds read and understand a little bit better as a human is by this story form. But I don't think that most of this stuff, most of the literature is meant to be taken literal, because this life is not literal, if you really think about it. And I think that there are deeper, more occult, esoteric symbols that for some reason, whenever we intake that information, whether it is by the occult or esotericism and symbolism and stuff like that, it is then interpreted by our subconscious mind, which is at work 100% of the time. It said that the human brain conjures up about 60,000 thoughts in a day. Most of us are not very aware of this, not very aware of the majority of our thoughts, because all of that information is constantly running in the background on the subconscious hard drive, essentially. And the non-solid state portion of our brain is the conscious mind most of the time, unless you can learn how to become more aware, more conscious. And that is done through, meditative practices and so on. But yeah, most of the time people are just running these programs in the back of their mind. They don't even know what the hell is going on with it. And so that's why these stories almost need to be told in story form, in esoteric form, in my opinion, because that's information for our subconscious to then input into our deeper inner understanding.
Well, on 12/21/12, Everybody thought the Mayan prophecy was going to be the end of the world, but it didn't, obviously. But something very profound occurred. We moved from the 3D into the lower 4D. Every baby born since 12/21/12 is fully 4D. And so are we, but we've got habits. And that subconscious stuff that we picked up that says, I'm not okay. Why didn't you get 100 on that test? Why did you only get 95? What's wrong with you? Are you stupid? You're not attractive. You're never going to amount to anything. Nobody's going to hire you. Nobody likes you anyway. All that stuff that everybody has picked up, you tuck it away in your subconscious. Well, when the magnetics of Earth changed, that's the clue that holds all that stuff in our subconscious. And it's coming loose and it's coming into our conscious mind. Have you not noticed how angry people are? You know, sad, people suffering, violence, wars, worse and worse and worse. Some people say, I don't know how people are even surviving, to that point. It's all part of the process. And there's ways to let that stuff. I thought about a woman that I had been involved with after my wife died. It was a terrible thing, terrible mistake. But I dealt with that a long time, years ago. And not maybe 6 months ago, I'm sitting around and all of a sudden all that pops in my head. And I'm like, where did this come from? That's what it is. A guy named Jim Self, who's an international lecturer. He's one of my heroes, and I've learned a lot from him. He says, when it pops up in your mind, tell yourself it's going away now and turn your head to the right, or better, take 3 steps to the right and it goes away. I thought, oh, that's a little hokey, but I tried it. I've been using it ever since. It works.
Wow.
Now, moving into the 4D is just a stepping stone to the 5D. They turned the dial on the moon to lunar space station. If they turned it, they could turn off the 3D matrix right now, but if they did, most people couldn't handle it. A lot of people are having trouble handling being in the 4D right now. But we're playing a game, Jonathan, without knowing the rules. Once you understand what truly is taking place, you can deal with it. There's techniques, there's methods. I wrote a lot about this. Rise of human perception. It's full of techniques that you can use to help yourself. And the Tibetans confirmed every bit of this. We've got the power that we can't even imagine. On the moon, every thought you think, every feeling you have, it's an energetic transfer. It's recorded. Whatever I started to tell you this earlier, I got sidetracked. The 3D matrix, I said, was a caricature of the 5D. And part of what that means is it was built in accordance with the law of attraction. Have you ever heard of the law of attraction?
Of course, The Secret.
Yeah. Whatever you truly want, you get. But we're just now kind of figuring that out. So what the reptilians did, one of us, me or you, we can impact our own reality for sure. And we could manifest a reality of our own, but we can't do the world. So what they wanted was to get us into a hive mind, all believing the same things. Remember, it's a mirror to your outside, what manifests in your outside reality.
Mm-hmm.
You get everybody believing the same basic things. And the Tibetans say that the three horns of the monster are just variations on the same lies, designed to separate us from the divine. And they got us all marching in lockstep, manifesting the same reality.
That's what the reptilians have us doing currently, you mean?
Yes.
Wow, that makes total sense.
They did it so slowly. See, they got us living 80, 90 years. But if you go to a Sumerian kings list that's in a museum in Oxford, England, some of these guys living for 36,000 years.
Shout out to Thoth.
They can afford to be patient, and they were very patient. And you see what's happened. We're slaves serving them, serving the master. And what's really important, ethics, values, morals, things that we can take with us don't matter. What does matter is immediate gratification, feeling good right now, money, material possessions, greed, prestige, competition and winning, and all this. That's obeying the master.
Well, and you're constantly, if you think about it, you're constantly hypnotized to some degree. And they have ways, of course, of amplifying that. If anybody's ever looked into like how LED lights work, it is a constant flicker rate. Why they say that LED lights are better for the environment, allegedly, is because they're constantly flickering on and off. So half the time that a LED light is on, it's actually off, but it's flickering so fast that our brains can't perceive what's going on. It's flickering. It's something crazy, like 300 times a second or something like that. And then you go and you look at your phone, and actually my buddy Jacob, he actually saw this in real time. Whenever you're looking at your phone, it is constantly taking mental snapshots of you. It's constantly flickering like this kind of X-ray or some kind of light onto your face, and that's why so many people are glued to the phone like a fly to a fire. You know, it's the craziest thing. And so whenever he came home one night and he couldn't find his keys, so he pulled out his phone because the outside light wasn't on. But he has one of those Ring doorbell cameras, right? And so he was trying to find his keys. So he was shining his phone light to try and, because I think he dropped them on the ground or something like that. And then he went to go look at his phone, and the doorbell camera picked up on, like, dude, it was like 1,000 flashes from his phone onto his face within a few seconds. It was the craziest thing. So we're constantly being mass hypnotized, almost like a character from The Incredibles. Like if I have a 3-year-old son, so we watch a lot of Disney and stuff like that. There's a character on the new Incredibles movie that came out a couple years ago, and the idea is that they would flash you in the face and then hypnotize you into essentially making you their slave. And I think that that's really what's going on somewhat in this reality. Whenever we got the constant drip of the LED flashes, we got the phone constantly flashing us in our face, and let's not even get into what's in the air, what's in the water, what's in the food. It is constantly meant to take away your own personal faculties and your free will, in a sense. And so whenever I hear people talking about how there are powers that be that are trying to essentially silence you or corral you like your cattle or something like that, you really don't have to look very far. Like, pay attention to your environment, learn about some of the chemicals and the ingredients within the food, understand what chemtrails are, see that fluoride was literally used by Hitler back in the day, and that we've amplified the amount of fluoride within our water by like 100x. And so it's very obvious that we are that they're essentially putting us inside of like a pack and play little baby bed and not letting us have our own free will. And I would have to imagine that's not being done by a really good race that wants to see us evolve. And so therefore, That's where maybe the idea of the draconians come in, or the reptilians, or whatever, because they essentially, I feel like they kind of almost see us as we're their pets or something like that.
We're their slaves. That's the word that the Tigatans, the Pleiades, that's what they say. We are the slaves. We've been enslaved. But the thing is, we get caught up here again in the outside world. We got to turn within. In 1990 or thereabouts, a French researcher named Dr. Amour, which means love in French, discovered that within our heart, there's a concentration of like 40,000 sensory neurons. These are brain cells, Jonathan. Now, on top of that, they are 100 times more powerful than those of our head.
I would imagine that we would have neurons in every part of the chakra system, right? Like that kind of makes sense, right?
Well, but right now I'm just talking about the heart, because the heart is our link up, our uplink to our spirit, our soul. Remember I said to Caro, said we're becoming a people of the heart. Your heart being much more powerful. If you can learn to link your head to your heart, and here again, in Rise of Human Perception, I talk about a methodology that you could connect the two to get them to work in harmony. And your memory will increase exponentially. It gives you deep intuition on demand. You ever had a phone ring and you knew who it was?
Many times.
Intuition. Yeah, well, everybody's experienced that. Well, what if you could do it at will? You know, and that's what we're doing. That's the goal. We have to raise our vibrational frequency. All we are is frequency. You talk about, I explained to you that the most suppresses the fourth and fifth. Okay? Now, let's say you walk into a room and you look up and there's a ceiling fan. It's got 4 blades. Turn it on, and the blades become blurred. You can't count the blades. If you were able to turn it on extremely fast, the blades will vanish. But they're still there. Well, the 5D is around us, but we can't see it because we're not a frequency match. But now that we're moving into the 4D, and these computers on the moon are failing, they had 12 nuclear power plants, but they're old. They're 12,500 years old. 8 of them have failed. They're working on alternative power sources, but if that thing crashed, we'd all be popped into the 5D. And we would suddenly start seeing strange interdimensional animals, monsters, ghosts, UFOs, millions of birds that we don't have in the 3D, elves, gnomes, fairies, all these things. They're there. They're there right now. And they're around us and they affect us every day, but we're unaware of it because we can't see it because we're too low of a frequency. We have to raise our frequency. And that's what happens as you go higher and higher and higher. In frequency, you become lighter and lighter and lighter. Can you remember what it's like when you first fell in love for the first time?
Nothing like it.
Yeah, that's a high frequency. That's what it feels like when you get to the 5th all the time. And whatever you want, manifest. There's no words. There's none of that. We can learn to communicate telepathically, and a lot of people are right now. The Tibetans use verbal telepathy. They speak with their mouth, but they load each word or phrase with 1,000% more information or data than the normal Earth word or phrase. So if you know how people, you'll say to someone, "How you doing?" "Oh, I'm fine." Well, you can't do that in that world because they know, they already know exactly what's going on with you.
Oh
So
yeah,
you don't lie to one another.
the
There's honesty between people.
the English language or any human language, I feel, is almost goo goo gaga compared to what higher dimensional language would be.
Yeah. Well, I know people. There's courses you can take right now to learn to speak or communicate, I should say, telepathically.
Yes.
We all do some of it. We all have this ability, but it's been suppressed. We were babies. We come into the world fully loaded. We're clairvoyant. We could communicate telepathically. I remember being a baby in the crib. Now, I couldn't talk, but I knew what was being said. How could that be?
Yeah.
But I knew.
Yeah, it's so funny. I'll bring up memories that I have as a real little one to my mom, and she'll be like, "How do you remember that? I barely remember that." My mom was, she had me whenever she was 19, and so 19 years old, I can remember a lot of things from whenever I was 19 years old. But she's like, "How do you remember that? You were like 2. That doesn't even make sense. How your brain could even comprehend what that thought even meant at that time." And I'm like, yeah, it's weird. I mean, they're stuck in the old mental trap.
You know that soft spot on top of a baby's head?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's why you're connected to your spirit when you're born. But gradually, that soft spot it hardens and you're cut off. Your parents say, "Stop playing with those imaginary friends." You know, quit
Oh yeah.
making this stuff up. But to you, they're real. And that's when you make a choice and you become a member of the human race. Mom and dad say, "I do," and we all do it,
Well,
but there's a way to open that back up.
yeah, there seems to be many ways of opening it back up, and that's what I'm so fascinated to always like hear about near death experiences or certain psychedelic trip reports or meditation experiences. And a lot of times you can see it almost in story form in books and really everywhere. And I feel like everybody is trying to describe the undescribable, because it can't be described. It's like the Tao that can be described can never be the true Tao, because you can never know the full complexity of all that is, and it's like, especially if you're looking at it through a certain filter of an individual who has had all these experiences that led him up to this bit of information. Well, they're only going to be able to describe it through their own lens of their own experiences. And I think that that's really what's been going on for the majority of human experiences. It's hard to put into words. So then it's just easier to go along.
There are no words. There's no words to describe it. It's like I was talking about with the ayahuasca. I mean, I can't tell somebody what it was like. I've been married to my wife for 30-some years, and she was right there with me, not in the jungle, but asked me about it when we got home. I couldn't tell her. I couldn't explain it to her. It's just the peripheral stuff. Yeah, I could tell her all of that, but I couldn't tell her what it was really like. There's no way. But what my goal is to help people awaken. I'm too old to worry about all this Mickey Mouse stuff of politics or sexual orientation or what the government's doing or not doing. I gave up on all that
I don't
because
care.
they're going to repeat the same stuff over and over and over. They're locked in that dense world. But I agree completely with what the Tibetans say. The only limitations that you have, that I have, that we all have, is in our own mind.
It's ourselves.
Where we're limited. If we can get out of our head and get into our heart, if I've learned anything. I trust my gut instincts. I trust what comes from my heart. If you ask a question and the heart answers, it's instantaneous. Sometimes you don't get an answer, but it's instantaneous. But if you wait a couple of minutes, the head takes over and starts logic and reason. Well, maybe that might not be. Why don't you think about doing this or that or the other? But from the heart, it's quick, it's instant. And the heart links us to our spirit. And once we remember that we are spirit, then we can start assuming the powers that we have. And the reptilians are done. If we wake up, they know they're finished because they can't control us anymore. Our battle isn't with them, it's within ourselves. That's the only place we can win. As the Tibetans say, every little person out there feeling like trash has the same power to start using one little 2-letter word, N-O. I'm not buying this anymore. I'm not going to listen to what the media is pushing into me, what the commercials are telling me. If I don't buy this, I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to be content, kind of thing, because it's all material world. I remember hearing someone say one of the worst things that was ever invented was materialism, the material world, because it's all outside of who we truly are.
Yeah, it's all they can do is suggest. And now they can infuse that suggestion with a little bit of emotion, which is really where the full trap is, because a lot of people feel justified in their actions or in their judgments or anything like that. And if you feel justified by your emotions through the suggestion that the political powers that be or whatever are infusing into your mind, then you're going to carry out their will. And that is just the absolute power of suggestion in general. And so the point is that we have to stop paying attention to what is going on, almost politically. I'm so far removed from everything political, it's not even funny. Like, I just believe that everything is a facade. It's a charade. If the entire world is called the Maya, which is the illusion, then why am I going to believe, what the puppet masters of the illusion are trying to tell me in the first place? It just doesn't make any damn sense. And I think that what you're saying is the power that each individual has as far as being able to just say no. I don't even want to glaze through that, because it is one of the most powerful things. And recently I just talked about how the power of no within yourself goes far beyond what you would even imagine. So, for example, as I was stating earlier, our mind has 60,000 thoughts in a day, and not all of them are great all the time, right? Like, there's some thoughts that we have that we wish we didn't have, and maybe it stems from envy or jealousy or judgment or lower vibrational shit. Right. And of course, our thoughts and our intentions and our emotions that are attached to those thoughts and intentions can sometimes manifest into this reality. However, if you have one of those thoughts, whatever it is, a thought that is very low vibrational, whatever it may be, you can just say no in your mind or out loud, and it will not manifest. This is something that I've personally learned on a personal basis to learn just to try and do. It's as my old co-host Sean used to say, it's crazy to just go trying stuff. And that's just really what it is. Sometimes you almost got to experiment with yourself in these kinds of ways, and it's crazy to see what happens as a result of that. And
That's what I was telling you about Jim Self. He's been doing this work since actually all of his life, but vehemently at it since 1980, and he's figured a lot of things out. And he says, now those thoughts that you were talking about that we don't like, are popping in our head more and more frequently because the magnetics have changed and the glue is no longer there to hold them in place, and they're slapping us in the face. But NO, it's going away now. Turn your head to the right. And they don't come back. But the big thing, how we've been controlled, is through the use of fear. Remember, we live in a duality universe. For everything, there's a polar opposite, up and down, hot and cold, male and female. Same with emotions, love and fear. Anger is fear turned outward. Depression is fear turned inward. Frustration, jealousy, envy, greed, violence, all those are fear-based emotions. And there's people saying that they've traced back every war that they could find in history, and the reptilians have been at the root of every one of them. Now, how they got to that, I don't know, but I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it,
Wow.
because what produces more fear than battlefields? Ask anybody that's ever been
Yeah.
to
That's why so many veterans come back and they're, yeah, I mean, you're
war.
trying to step back into a world that is so far removed from the world that you were just existing in.
Yeah, it produces the most fear. And they feed on this dense, dark energy. It's like food for them. How that is, I don't know. But why does a dog eat its own feces? They feed off of the dense energy. They need it for their food, literally. And boy, have they created a farm to generate fear. So what I watch is fear, and I avoid fear. I'm not talking about normal fears that are good fears. I'm talking about fears that just pop into your head. You're uneasy, you're worried, frustrated. All those things are fear-based. I don't want that. It doesn't feel good. But we have to reprogram ourselves. We've got to, with the neuroscience, they said we can rewire our brain, open up new pathways. And one of the things that Jim talks about, and I'll give you just an example. You know what the word confident means?
Confident?
Confident.
Okay.
COFIDENT. You know what it means, right?
Sure.
Now, close your eyes, literally, and feel confident.
Okay.
You feel the difference?
Yeah,
It's a rise in your frequency. Your vibration just went up.
wow.
Yeah. Now,
That seems like such a simple concept, but put into practice, you can actually feel it.
you have to do it. You have to do it. You take, say, 3 words to form a geometric pattern that the brain recognizes. Take confident and then do competent and add happy. And walk around with these for the next 3 days. And you will have rewired neuroplasticity in your brain. Then you pick 3 more. I use grateful. I've got it right here on my desk. I keep them up there all the time on Post-it notes. Grateful, compassionate, empathetic. And then I am one with all. And we are. We're quantumly entangled with everything in the universe. I am powerful. I'm connected to all. Feel those words. They're doing good to think up here, but the heart again, it's where you feel.
Which makes sense that then the neurons would be inside of the heart because now your heart is doing the thinking for you whenever you're encompassing these affirmations.
Yeah. And they've learned that not only is the heart 100 times more powerful, but it thinks separately from the brain. It remembers. Secondly, you walk into a room with 100 people and come out and I say, hey, did you see Joe in there? Oh, no, I really didn't. But in your heart, you close your eyes and scan, and there he is. Because your heart takes a picture of everything. I can go on all day with stuff that's come up.
Oh man. Yeah, there's a lot of these kind of things that we can really get in tune with ourself with.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to just put up a mask and be this caricature of who you are trying to outwardly express to the world. And a lot of people hide behind that mask and they don't deal with their own inner self. And so therefore all the shadow work is just constantly just manifesting into the mirrored version of their world, which we would call maybe the material reality. And they're like, why are all these bad things happening? And it's like, well, I don't know. Maybe it was somewhat manifested because of
created these bad things. We are responsible for the chaos in the world, for all the bad things, because we created. Yes, we were manipulated into it. We were mind controlled, brainwashed, but we created it because that's the way the system works. It's a program. It's just a program. But talking about all this. It's great. It's fun. It's exciting. I love talking about all this stuff. But where the rubber meets the road is when we start taking the action and putting into practice what I'm talking about. It may sound a little hokey, but try it. I learned that 40 years ago, things that sounded crazy to me. How many of us have not been guilty of thinking about doing or not doing something, and our decision hinges on what others will think of us?
Yep. Totally understand. Yeah, it's one thing to take in information, and it's an entirely other world to integrate it into your life. And you see that with a lot of religious folk nowadays. They're like, well, I believe this. They don't really believe it. They just haven't even tried to integrate it into their lives. And that's why it's like, I've always been the kind of person that judges based upon the fruit, as even the Bible will tell you to judge based upon the fruit. And if the fruit is spoiled, then that means that the message isn't comprehensible enough for a person to fully integrate it into their lives. And I think that, whether it's getting into neuroscience and meditation and all these other things, these are things that our logical mind and our illogical or imaginative, our right brain mind can both get behind to allow them to be able to intermesh, because I think that people are talking about how we live in two separate worlds. You can combine the two through your interpretation of your innermost self. And so now it's no longer even an inner world versus an outer world. It is now they are one and the same. Stop separating the two. They are one thing. And it's a beautiful experience whenever you can find a way to intermesh the two.
Well, another thing, and we're coming up on the time here, I know, but another little pearl that I wrote in same book, Rise of Human Perception. We talk about frequency, and our frequency is based upon our vibration, which is based upon the number of oscillations per second of our atomic matter. All right. Now, we all have an auric field. In my first book called Shining Bear, there's a photo of me on the front cover. It was taken by a special camera of my auric field.
Really?
Really. And if I have,
I've always been so interested to see what my aura looks like. I'm not somebody that can perceive that kind of stuff, but I have heard of these kind of cameras that can pick up on the auric fields. And I would imagine that it's something that varies.
Auras. I teach in 5 minutes or less.
Hey, I do want to get your opinion, though. I'm always curious to see what everybody's opinion of what is going on in the skies with these orbs is. And through your perspective and through your own understanding, what is really going on with Chris Bledsoe, and not even just Chris Bledsoe? Everybody's having these experiences with orbs. I've documented several videos of orbs that are floating in the night sky that definitely aren't airplanes, definitely are nothing human, at least to our own human senses. What do you think is going on right there?
Well, according to the Tibetan, some of what we see, like people report seeing plasma machines or orbs.
Right.
And we say what it is the engines of the spacecraft that heat up and they're ionizing with the Earth's atmosphere, and it's creating that view. But
now these are coming from different densities or dimensions in your understanding?
Well, everything outside of Earth that comes in is then subject. Once you come inside the Van Allen belts, you're into 3D. Everything outside is 5D.
Okay, that makes sense.
Or now we're in the 4D.
What would be the purpose of it, though? Why would they be trying to just float above our skies? It's almost as if they want to be seen.
That is it. They want to make us aware that they're here. I just last week was watching an episode. It was a new episode, and I'm not sure when it came out. It's been fairly recently on cosmic disclosure, a Gaia program. And they had this guy who was an ex-Green Beret, and he's been having all this. And well, he's had visitations since childhood, but he's been having missing time. So Gaia paid for a regression hypnotist to regress him back to these missing time periods. And he's in communication with the group known as the Andromedans. They're known as the shipbuilders of the universe. And through him, and he didn't remember any of this. It showed him watching the video with the host of Cosmic Disclosure. He didn't remember it, but the therapist, a woman, was able to communicate with the Andromedans using him as a voice, a medium. Okay? And they said, why do you want him? What do you need him for? And they said, we want him to be an ambassador to help people to get ready for our coming. And she said, when are you coming? And they said, 2027.
Let's go. Yeah, this is actually what I believe this is what Bashar has been channeling as well, that 2027 is going to be the year. I've
been hearing this at least since the early part of this decade. There was a clandestine meeting of intelligence officers back around 22, 23. No one knew what was said in there, but the story is when these guys came out, they were white as sheets. And they said that something was going to happen between then and 2027. A similar thing came out from some of the Vatican stuff. I've heard 2027, it keeps coming up. I'm not sitting here telling you that they're going to show up. We're going to wake up one morning next year and the sky's going to be full of alien spaceship. But the indications are that's exactly what's coming.
Which would make sense.
Men showing up. We just don't hear about it in this country. In Italy, there's a guy named Antonio Uzzi right now that wherever he goes, they follow him. And he's got videos, and he didn't have any money, and he's not making any money off of this. But from 1956 to 1978, this group of ETs came there to Italy. Several of them lived in Milan, but they had an underwater base, and they wanted to live here. And they said they were driving cars. And this guy, who's a scientist and head of this one university, wrote a book, and I have the book here called mass contact. And they interfaced with every walk of life, and they had pictures all over the place. They even lifted a horse up in one of these photos, and you see a flying horse go by in this video.
What?
A flying horse. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. But this Mexican journalist who's been into this stuff for years was in Italy investigating, and he thought that this has got to be a hoax. But he goes to the Vatican, and they find a painting from like 1320 or something like that with a flying horse. And then they found two in Florence. One of them was taken in the 1400s, and I think one of them went back to the 1200s. But of flying horses with people standing around, and here's this flying horse going by.
Are you talking about like a horse with wings or a horse like levitating?
A horse being somehow levitated by these craft.
Oh my God.
Going by.
Yeah.
A real horse, a real horse.
Yeah, there's going to be so many things that seem incomprehensible or impossible that I think is definitely upon the precipice. And I think even just looking back throughout even just the last 5 or so years, we wouldn't know that we would be coming here right now. I mean, maybe it was talked about in small circles and maybe hush hush and whispered, but now it seems to be talked about on somewhat of a mass scale, and people, it's almost like have you ever been if you've ever worked in a restaurant, or maybe you've gone to a new restaurant, what a lot of restaurants will do, they have this thing that's called a soft open before they have the official launch of whenever the restaurant officially opens. And so usually during a soft open, it's just like, the workers' families that'll come and test out the food and test out the atmosphere and test out the service and everything like that. And I feel like
a couple of those.
Yeah, I mean, they're a lot of fun. But I feel like that soft opening has almost been going on for at least the last 5 or 6 years.
Well, that's what this guy Antonio says when he was asked, why do you think they chose you? And he said, well, they've been around me since childhood. I was interested in it, but he said, what they're here for is they're showing themselves to desensitize us, to get us accustomed to seeing them.
That makes sense.
And this, in Israel, Chaim Eshed worked in the Israeli government at a very high level for 30 years. I mean, remarkable man. And he came out when he retired and said that the U.S. and the Israeli governments, at least, had been meeting with the Federation, and that they were the ones keeping the lid on disclosure, that we weren't ready.
Yeah, I don't like that those are the two countries that are in on it, but personally, with all the shit that's going on with that, but I'm led to believe that there's definitely something going on there. There's no doubt about it. And I know exactly the gentleman you're talking about. He said that Trump is well aware of the Galactic Federation or whatever it is, and that he's aware of the aliens and stuff like that. And this was no schmo within the Israeli government or military. Like, this guy was at the top of his sector saying all of this.
Yeah.
So, well, look, Harry, I think that we could go on and on and on, and I would love to be able to turn this into a several part series, because I know that what you're talking about, at least in this episode, has only grazed the surface as far as what you've experienced, what you've talked about. And this was almost our own little soft disclosure leading up into future shows, sir. So, look, before you go, every single episode we do a tarot card reading, and it's just a 1-card tarot pull, if you're okay with that. And what we ended up getting, let me take these stunner shades off real quick. What we ended up getting was the King of Cups, which is very interesting. And I like to go to my beautiful tarot guide over here, and it says, In tarot, kings are the masters of their suit, representing stability, authority, and healthy masculine energy. The King of Cups represents the elements of fire and water, which exist in harmony without overpowering one another. The king is seated on a concrete throne that appears stable despite floating in water. The ship in the background symbolizes taking action for himself, but also on behalf of the many passengers aboard. He is able to navigate emotional depths without allowing the waves to drag him downward. Many people rely on the king, and he is loving, empathetic, and intuitive in response to their needs. Now, why that is so interesting, because the cards, that's the reason why we do the tarot cards at the end of the episode, because we're trying to almost like envelop the energy of the conversation that was just had, and usually the card that spits out is the one that is almost like a clarifier, right? And why that's so interesting is because I've been doing this show for going on 3 years. We have never pulled that card. Never, not even one time. And the fact that it talks about how there are ships in the background, it brought up exactly what you talked about as far as many people relying on this king because he's loving, empathetic, and intuitive in response to their needs. This is exactly lining up with the episode. So I just wanted to say, I mean, I don't know if you mess around with tarot cards, but I feel like there's always some sort of like perfect divine message. And that's usually why I only do like one card pulls, because, you know, otherwise it can get a little convoluted, and the one card pull is, you know, the easiest somewhat to comprehend. But I'm in absolute belief of just about everything you said, and I cannot wait for the shows going forward, man.
I'll leave you with this to close it out, okay? The Tibetans, when they put all this out, they said many humans will reject it, which that's no big surprise. But they said it would resonate with what they call key people, starseeds. Now, we didn't go there, but humanity did not originate on Earth. We did not originate from and evolve from monkeys and apes. We have all the same ancestry. These Tibetans, Palladians, Alpha Centaurians, all of them. We are kin of the same Lyrian ancestry. And I became convinced that I am indeed a starseed. Not that that makes me any better or worse or anything else. But I've always known there was something, not better, not worse, but something different with me. And
well, the fact that you just said that, and I look up the clock and it's 1:11, I think that just confirms it in my mind.
Yeah.
So Harry, if you would, sir, let people know where they can find you and all of your amazing books, and anything else that can lead them in your direction.
My books are all available on Amazon. I've told you about Rise of Human Perception to get techniques and methodologies. Imminent Shift talks about the shift that we are in now, and is a veritable encyclopedia on what's been taking place with UFOs over the last 75, 80 years.
That's a beautiful cover, by the way. I'm looking at it here on Amazon, and I was like, wow, that is a cosmic cover if I've ever seen one.
And the last one, the newest book, is all about the Tibetans and not much of the stuff that we talked about today. Revelations, the greatest secrets in human history.
Perfect.
And I talk about the secrets or the secret that we keep from ourselves. I heard that from the Caro, and I didn't know what they were talking about. And I asked them, what secret are you referring to? They said, that's what you've got to uncover. It took me 20 years, but I did.
All right. Well, oh my God, I cannot wait for the next show we do together. I'm thinking probably a month, because I don't know if I can wait much longer than that, sir.
All right, you just call it and I'll be there.
Perfect. Well, look, for all of the initiates out there and the mystics of the mysteries, hopefully you guys really enjoyed this conversation. I know I certainly did, and I can't wait for future episodes as well. If you want to be able to support the show, come on over to patreon.com/metamystics. That link is down in the show notes below. What you'll get is absolutely free, absolutely commercial-free content over there, as well as being able to get the shows days, if not weeks in advance, and you'll be able to join the community. And if you want, we actually have another tier every Wednesday night at 8 or 9 p.m. I'm considering a change because people go to bed a little early, totally understandable. You'll be able to come and be a fly on the wall or join in on the conversation for the live shows that happen every Wednesday night, and that is a part of the Wonder Wednesday tier if you want to be a part of those kind of conversations. That being said, look, if Harrison Viers Newberry came here and he taught you anything, it's that you don't know what you don't know. So don't just get weird, stay weird.